to make a difference during the pandemic. They started Create and Educate LLC to help educators and parents during some tough times. They're focusing on literacy and leadership. CN2's REAL Jackson has more on how they're helping the community.
Create and Educate, we are a consulting firm that works with educators as well as entrepreneurs. So with the side where we're working with educators, we offer professional development on literacy as well as implicit bias. We work with leaders and leadership teams to help improve schools.
They've been surviving pandemic education by offering tips for school leaders, teachers, and parents.
We really want to see kids through the trajectory, graduating from high school, ready to go to college or to start a career or to go into the military.
Create and Educate has multiple community partners in the area that read books to children weekly, discuss literature, and express their support for the education system. Recently, the owners were featured for Amazon's #1 best-selling book entitled Women Who Lead in Education.
And so we are super, super excited because we're amongst a family of women leaders who are absolutely extraordinary. So it's an honor to have been asked to participate. And then even more of an honor now that the book has gone on sale and it became a #1 bestseller. So you don't have to be a school leader to have leadership qualities.
Collectively, both Tammy Taylor, principal of Great Falls Elementary, and Dr. Sheka Houston, principal of Chester Middle School, have 40 years of service in education. They have learned the need in their community, and they plan to
serve all children in all communities. And one of the things that we enlighten people about in our professional development with literacy is that sometimes it's hard for children to connect to text because they don't see themselves in text. Providing that culturally relevant literature for students, and that's not just African American students, that's all students. Every student at every school should be able to see themselves in a book, in a text, to be able to connect with it.
Surviving pandemic education together in Chester, REAL Jackson, CN2 News.
Again, their goal is to help connect educators, parents, community members, and authors each week to help better navigate the pandemic. To learn more about Create and Educate LLC, simply follow them on Facebook or at their website at createandeducate.com.
Create and Educate held their first personal event after a year of completely virtual events. The organization started during the pandemic, and their goal was to create a way to educate students, teachers, and families virtually. During their Lunch and Learn event, teachers, university experts, leaders, and educators speaking about ways to prepare students since the pandemic.
It has been very difficult. Some teachers have decided to leave the profession as well as leaders. So we know that education is something that all of our children need. We want to be able to build resilience in our leaders and our teachers so that our education system will be resilient as well.
We needed to provide the space for some dialogue on how we move forward from here and how we can shift where we are in education so that as we move forward, we're moving forward and we are not just trying to do school as usual, but truly looking for some new and innovative ideas for what's going to take us to that next level.
Create and Educate also celebrating its 1-year anniversary.
Great morning, everyone. As you can see, Tammy and I are on location this morning. We're actually presenting at the SCASB conference here in Charleston, South Carolina. So good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank y'all for joining us.
Definitely. And our session yesterday, 2 sessions yesterday went very well. So shout out to the SCASB organization and the committee, Dr. Sabrina Suber, Mr. Edmond, and also Dr. Jeff Coate, who had found us a place on the site in the conference area to broadcast from this morning. We were hoping to be able to get on with Principal Hurt, but he had some travel conflicts with the plane delays. So we're going to actually go see him next. But thank you all again for joining us. We are very excited and on fire from yesterday and ready to present again today. And we know that you all are going to miss Principal Hurt, but we'll get to see him in a few minutes at 11:30. So we are the co-founders of Create and Educate. We are cultivators of resilience through our framework that we developed that helped to move our schools 2 and 3 report card grade levels with the help of our dynamic staffs in 1 year. So we are paying it forward with this broadcast that we bring to you every Saturday at 10:30 in the REALL Academy, brought to you by Create and Educate. So we are finishing up what we started last week, our topic from last week, which was igniting the fire of teachers. And we left off, we went through the entire REALL framework. I'm pulling it up here on my phone. We went through the acronym. And so we left off with leadership, the last L of the acronym to ignite teachers' fires. The video that we showed last week showed how teachers, can be burned out this time of year. A lot of things are coming on them, and even more things are being added, new strands of COVID. In education, we are dealing with a lot. So we want to make sure that we're supporting our teachers. We want to make sure we're supporting our leaders. And this will definitely help to do that. Good morning, Principal Kafele. So that last acronym was leadership, which we're empowered. The lighting the teachers' fires will definitely empower them to be leaders of their own classrooms. You always want teachers to feel like they are leaders in their classrooms.
And that's one of 3 tips that we're giving this morning for making sure that that fire is kindled and continue to be the flames fanned so that they can stay on fire for the remainder of the year. Another is to empower teachers to lead initiatives to show their areas of strength and expertise. Like, call upon them to support you in areas where you need some extra hands. I think that teachers enjoy stepping up to the plate and being a part of the solution to the issues that face our respective schools. So just empower them to be able to show what they know and what they can do, because all of our teachers have some level of expertise and have a myriad of experiences in multiple areas.
Definitely. And even after our presentation on yesterday, a teacher came up and wanted to know that particular presentation was on restorative practices. And she noticed some inequities that a lot of people notice, that things that are happening to African-American children by people who may not understand their culture. And she wants to be a voice and do something about it, but wasn't really sure how to go about it. So even teachers lighting your own fires, being proactive, we advised her that one thing she could ask her principal was to be a part of a committee, or to form a committee, equity committee, to be able to look at those numbers and pull that information and present it to the staff, so the staff could have real dialogue and conversations about what is happening at the school. So sometimes you just have to be strategic about the things that you would like to do in order to make sure that your voice is being heard and be able to make a difference for children.
And when you give teachers voice, they appreciate that, because they know that you care what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And even when there isn't the opportunity for you to do anything about what they're saying, just listening and validating the fact that this is a legitimate concern, or this is legitimate for us to have this discourse around, they will appreciate that. And that does empower them again to keep their fires lit.
Most definitely. And that last point is just empowering their voices, like Tammy talked about. And another point to what we talked about yesterday in the restorative practices, we mentioned to leaders, anytime you start an initiative at your school, and this applies to district leaders as well, it doesn't go over well a lot of times when we push things down as mandates, or, you know, we're just top down, just usually doesn't have a whole lot of buy-in. But when you ask people to go on a journey with you, especially with things like restorative practices, you put the right trainings into your professional development plans. And if you are planning any trainings for restorative practices, call Tammy and I. That's what we're doing. But you also are able to make sure that people feel comfortable taking risk. And then you're also empowering them to try different things in their classrooms that they learn from different PDs. You bring them back in your staff meetings. You allow them to share their successes, those experiences. You model and try new things as well, and share those success stories, and maybe even some things that you need to change, pitfalls that may have gone wrong that'll help someone else. But it will empower people and show people, well, hey, maybe I can try this too, because we know, you know, if you're doing it correctly, you will get the results that you're looking for, and students will respond to it, and your culture will become different.
And I love the question, Sherrod, because one of the things that I think is a part of why we have a very strong culture at my school is you do have those teachers who are going to volunteer, and they're going to be there to support you in anything that you're doing. And they're the ones that you can call on midnight, and they'll meet you at the school. Mm-hmm. But what you also have is a staff of teachers who have different areas of expertise. So when the teachers who volunteer and are going to be in there with you are there and doing what they do, that's great. But there may be something that you call upon Tammy to do that I didn't volunteer to help in this particular area, but you know, you've been watching me, and you know this is an area where you feel like I could bring something to the table. That actually will empower that teacher to step up more often. So sometimes teachers are waiting on an invitation to become a part of that leadership, but sometimes teachers are resistant to the fact, and teachers have the capacity, and they may tell you, no, how much are you going to pay me to do it? Now, you may be able to give them a stipend, but you might not. So if you aren't, then you have to tell them, like, well, I'll call back on you when I get funds that I could pay you for your work. But just going through in your mind and assigning those folks that you have been blessed to have access to see where they fit in the grand scheme of things, where they fit in the plan, that master plan for the school, and then allowing them to lead those areas where you know they can bring strength to the table.
And just to add to what Tammy talked about, she's absolutely correct. And it doesn't have to always be instructional things. It could be, I know when I was in the principalship, I had a large number of teachers that came from other countries. So I needed somebody to help them get acclimated to our community, show them things like the grocery store, you know, where you buy certain things, where you might be able to get your hair done. So I had some people I could call on. Hey, I need you to help take this group under your wings and help get them acclimated to, you know, our county, to our city.
Which is awesome.
Different socials that we may have. So everyone has a talent. You have to know your staff and know where to fit them in, because it might not be instructional for everyone. It might not be classroom management, but everyone can fit in somewhere.
And that is so good that you say that, because one of the things that reminded me of when Sheka said that was I had a teacher who was almost resistant to everything She was new and trying to wrap her mind around things, but you know what she was excellent at? She was an event planner. She could just throw the best events. She's volunteered to help me with a map party or something. And I was like, girl, this is your new gig. You get to plan all of the celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever that can be is where you use them. You don't have to, as Sheka said, have an academic focus or a management focus, because everything that you do is a part of what makes the school work.
Exactly. So just plug them in where you know they their talents will be best used, and they'll appreciate it too.
Yes, absolutely.
So we wanted to also share what we are presenting today. So I'm going to bring this up, and the title of our session today is "The Salvation of the Africana Child, Africana Womanism, the Paradigm." And this is based on, let me take this banner down so we can see and you all can see, based on Tammy's research through her dissertation, which you all have heard us talk about Africana womanism before, but we're going to go into it in more detail today in our session. So hopefully anyone tuning in from Scatsby, if you are here in Charleston, please stop by our session because you will be enlightened. We're going to be talking about how these principles will help save the Africana child. And we know from statistics that our children really do need our help in the areas that the opportunity gap, from them having exclusionary practices happen to them more often than other children of other races. So these principles will help anyone who is interested in helping African American children.
And the title of the dissertation was such that it focuses on the legacy of the Africana community, because children are the way that we're going to sustain and continue the legacy of the Africana community. And if we don't prepare them, or if we don't train them, if we don't make sure they are aware of who they are and why they are and where they fit into this grand scheme of things, then we're going to continue to lose our youth to other things that are more enticing. So this is a family-centered paradigm where you're going to have family centrality at the center of everything that we do. So even though it's an Africana womanist theoretical construct, the Africana man is a very important part of this paradigm, because men and women and children are in this fight together, because we're all fighting for the liberation of our people together.
And that's the biggest difference between Africana womanism and feminism, because in feminism, they are more against males or feel like males are the problem. However, in this construct, we recognize that we are all in the same fight together, or that's what Dr. Hudson Weems recognized, because she is the progenitor of this great work and the framework. So we are excited to be able to continue her work. And Tammy has also been a part of an anthology along with her.
Yes, I actually am a contributing author in her newest book, the newest published book. I think there's one coming out now, but the one that was published in October is called Africana Melanated Womanism. We're in it together. And I have a chapter in there about the Africana child and bridging that gap between pre-K-12 and the academy, because there is a disconnect. And we know that our kids don't go into the academy at the same rates as kids of other ethnicities sometimes. And why that is a part of the work that we're trying to do to, as Sheka said, address those opportunity gaps that exist so that our children understand the opportunities that can lie before them.
And we know that in the next 5 minutes before it's time for us to jump on with Principal Kafele, won't get through all 18 of these, but we are going to try to give it some justice. The first two characteristics actually go hand in hand and are self-naming and self-defining. And Dr. Chikokua does a lot with his work about how African-American children and African-Americans, period, are negatively depicted in media. And sometimes we align ourselves to those false images, but we have to self-name and self-define because we cannot answer to anything. We cannot allow people to tell us who we are. We have to tell people and show people exactly who we are. And that's how we have to develop our children, to make sure that they know about that negative imagery and how to make sure they're overcoming that.
In African terminology, that term is nomo, for the proper naming of a thing. And that's exactly what Sheka's talking about. We have to properly name ourselves so that we are not called other things. And the important thing, though, is it doesn't matter what somebody else calls you. It matters what we answer to. And so just being on point with helping kids to know you can self-name, you can self-identify.
Exactly.
Then the second characteristic of Africana womanism is what Sheka mentioned before, and that is how we are centered around the family. And it is that family centeredness. And when you are looking at family centrality, it places the entire Black family at the nucleus of what we do in that family unit. And it is leading us to the concept that the whole community depends on us to be a part of the whole that makes up our larger community.
And actually, I think that was the third one. The first two went together, and I know we're off because I have to name the titles different. But the fourth characteristic is wholeness, and it's defined here as the whole of the community is not overshadowed by vying for individual accolades or accomplishments. So that wholeness represents the fact that Africana womanist ability to be okay with herself, realizing that she is complete and needs validation from no one.
Yeah, it's very important too, as we're talking to you guys about what the characteristics are, to just keep in mind they go together. They're just they fit like hand in glove, because the family being at the center creates that whole concept of the community, and then that wholeness as it relates, as Sheka said, to the Africana woman comes back to we are just fine being who we are, and I don't need anybody to validate who Tammy is. I know who I am, and I'm completely fine with that. And I'm also fine if you're not fine with it. The next characteristic is spirituality, and that is just recognizing that there is a supreme being somewhere, knowing that God is the one, and everybody doesn't have the same spiritual connections, and we recognize that. But you recognize that that higher power is in charge of what happens in your life. And you are guided by and making your decisions based on those things that have connected you to that being that keeps you from day to day. And Sheka and I talked about in the study, this is one part of the characteristics that was woven throughout the fabric of the study, because that's what we do as Black women. We lean and we depend on our faith.
We do. And it's one of the reasons that I was really connected to Africana womanism as well. The fact that it unites males and women and the spirituality part of it. So we are at our time. You all be in prayer for our presentations as well as Principal Hurt. And we thank you all for joining us. Please remember to jump over to Principal Kafele's page next. He is going to have a great guest on this afternoon. We'll probably have to go back and catch the replay of it. And also make sure you jump on with Josh and Dean on Sunday at 7 for Unlock the Middle. So you all have a great rest of your
Saturday and a great weekend and a happy MLK Day on Monday.
Definitely. Thank you, guys.